December 1944. The war, everyone believes, is almost over. Paris is free. The Allies have crossed into Germany. Soldiers on both sides whisper the same word. Christmas, but in the cold silence of a Berlin bunker. One man refuses to surrender to reality. Adolf Hitler is about to gamble the last blood of his empire. On one final, desperate strike. The plan was madness wrapped in precision. Operation Whacked, AM Rhine. The watch on the Rhine, while his armies crumble in the east and his cities burn under Allied bombs. Hitler dreams of one more victory, one so devastating it might split the Western Allies apart. His vision, punch through the snowy Ardennes, drive to the port of Antwerp, cut the Allied forces in two, and force Britain and America to the negotiating table. A fantasy of triumph in a war already lost. Around him, the few who still dare to question, no, it's suicide. The Reich no longer has the fuel, the manpower, or the skies. But Hitler no longer hears objections, only echoes of his past victories. The enemy thinks we are finished, he declares. We will teach them to fear again. And so, in the frozen forests of Belgium and Luxembourg, nearly 200,000 German soldiers take position in secret. Entire divisions, panzer units, SS troops, and exhausted veterans waiting silently under the trees. The night is cold, heavy with fog, and filled with a strange calm, as if the land itself knows what is coming. Across the front, the Americans are relaxed. After months of brutal fighting in France, the Ardennes are considered a quiet sector, the perfect place for rest and resupply. Young soldiers write letters home, dreaming of snow, music, and the promise of peace. In small Belgian villages, children hang decorations in shattered windows, unaware that the war is about to crash down on them again. In the early hours of December 16, 1944, the silence explodes. The forest erupts with the thunder of thousands of German guns. Artillery rains down on the American lines, a shock so sudden that many believe it as just a local raid. But then come the tanks, Tigers, Panthers, and armored columns emerging from the mist like steel beasts. The Battle of the Bulge has begun. The name will come later, coined by Allied commanders as they watch the front line bend like a bow. For now, it's chaos. Entire U.S. units are overwhelmed before they even understand what's happening. Roads clog with refugees and broken convoys. Radios crackle with confusion. We're under attack everywhere. The enemy is using our uniforms because they are. Hitler has unleashed Operation Grief. Commandos dressed as American soldiers, infiltrating lines, switching signposts, and spreading panic. In the midst of that fog and fear, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the supreme Allied commander, receives the impossible news. The Germans are attacking with massive force in the Ardennes. The place everyone thought was safe is now the center of the war. He stares at the map, the red arrows pushing westward, toward Liege and Antwerp. The bulge is real, and if it breaks, so does the Allied line. Hitler watches from his wolf's lair, convinced the plan is working. His generals warn him, fuel reserves will last only days, weather could turn, reinforcements are too far behind. He silences them with a glare. Victory will give us everything we need, he says. It's not strategy anymore. It's faith or delusion. Meanwhile, in the snow-covered fields, men on both sides fight not only the enemy, but the cold. Temperatures drop below freezing. Tanks freeze in place. Wounded soldiers are found days later, turned to ice, rifles still in hand. The forests echo with gunfire and screams swallowed by the wind. But even in that chaos, small acts of courage shine through. A lone American unit holds a crossroad until the last bullet. A German medic tends to both friend and foe. A Belgian farmer hides 2 children under the floorboards as shells shatter the house above. War reduces everything, glory, politics, ideology, to survival. By the 3rd day, the Germans are deep into Allied territory. They have captured thousands of prisoners, destroyed convoys, and reignited the fear that the war could still be lost. In London and Washington, leaders begin to wonder, how could this happen? How did Hitler, beaten and cornered, manage to strike such a blow? The answer lies in deception, weather, and arrogance. The Allies had believed that no sane commander would attack through the Ardennes in winter, not after the failure of 1940's French campaign, but Hitler was counting on that very assumption. He had hidden entire armies in the fog, and now that fog was his greatest weapon. Still, every gamble has its price. Behind the initial success, cracks begin to show. The German fuel trucks can't keep up. Bridges are clogged with wreckage. American resistance stiffens at crossroads and villages. And though Hitler doesn't know it yet, one town, Bastogne, will soon become his nightmare. For now, the snow keeps falling. And as darkness descends over the Ardennes, soldiers light cigarettes with trembling hands, unsure if they'll live to see the dawn. Above them, in the sky they can't yet see, Allied planes wade behind clouds, ready to return when the weather clears. Hitler's final gamble has begun, and with it, the last great storm of World War II. The morning of December 17, 1944, the sun never truly rises over the Ardennes. A gray mist rolls through the pine forests, muffling the echo of engines and footsteps. The cold cuts like a knife, and in every direction there is only fog and fire. The German advance is relentless. Thousands of Wehrmacht and SS troops pour through the woods, their tanks grinding over the frozen roads of Belgium and Luxembourg. The offensive has caught the Allies completely off guard. Small American units are scattered, isolated, and overwhelmed. On the front line, confusion reigns. Radios jammed, orders lost, rumors spreading faster than truth. Many young Gias think it's a German retreat until the shells start falling. They hear the shriek of artillery, the thunder of Tiger tanks, the boots of soldiers shouting in German. Within hours, entire regiments vanish into the fog. In the chaos, stories of horror begin to circulate. At Malmedy, an American convoy is ambushed. The survivors, mostly unarmed prisoners, are gathered in a snowy field by SS troops of Kampfer Piper and gunned down in cold blood. 84 men executed. It becomes one of the darkest moments of the entire Western Front, and a rallying cry for every Allied soldier still breathing in that frozen hell. The offensive's speed is stunning. German tanks slice through the countryside, their crews fueled by desperation and propaganda. Villages fall, one after another. St. Vith, Clairvaux, Huffelise, names that will soon become ashes. Civilians flee on foot, dragging carts through snow, leaving behind everything they own. The world had thought the German army was finished. But here, in the Ardennes, it feels alive again. Brutal, disciplined, and vengeful. Hitler's plan works for now. The fog keeps the Allied planes grounded, blinding their greatest advantage. Eisenhower's generals scramble to understand what's happening. Is it a small attack, a diversion, or something far worse? Maps fill with red arrows that seem to move faster than human logic. At headquarters, panic turns to disbelief. It's impossible, one officer mutters. They can't have that many men, but they do. Nearly 250,000, hidden in plain sight. Meanwhile, in the field, American courage hardens. Cut off and surrounded, small platoons turn barns and churches into fortresses. In one frozen village, a handful of paratroopers hold off an entire German column for nearly 24 hours. Each delay, every hour bought with blood, slows the German advance just enough for reinforcements to arrive. In the midst of this chaos stands General George S. Patton, hundreds of miles to the south. When he hears of the attack, he doesn't hesitate. "We'll turn north," he growls. His staff stares in disbelief. Turning an entire army 90 degrees through winter roads in days is suicidal. But Patton only smiles. "We'll do it in 48 hours, and they do. His Third Army begins to move, engines roaring through snowstorms, headlights dimmed, driven by fury and purpose. Still, the situation is desperate. Hitler's armored spearheads drive toward the Meuse River. If they reach it, they could split the Allied front in two. German commanders push their men forward without rest. Fuel is low, ammunition scarcer, but orders are absolute. Reach Antwerp or die trying. Inside Hitler's headquarters, the mood is euphoric. Reports of German gains pour in. American lines shattered, prisoners captured by the thousands. Hitler is convinced this is his miracle. His second coming of 1940, he tells his generals, the enemy is broken. Soon they will beg for peace. But deep down, some of those generals already see the truth. This victory is an illusion made of fog and blood, because while the Germans advance, they also bleed. Every village they take costs men, fuel, and time. Each burned tank is one they cannot replace. Every mile gained stretches their supply lines thinner, and above them, the skies are beginning to change. The fog is thinning. In Bastogne, a small crossroads town in southern Belgium, American paratroopers of the 101st Airborne Division dig in. They don't know it yet, but this frozen, nameless place will soon become the heart of the battle. The Germans plan to crush it in days. Instead, Bastogne will stand like a rock in the storm. For now, though the storm rages, the ground shakes with artillery, villages burn, soldiers vanish in the smoke, civilians hide in cellars, praying for morning. But in this inferno, something is changing. The Allies have found their footing. The first counterattacks begin. The Battle of the Bulge is no longer just a surprise offensive. It's turning into a test of endurance, of courage, of will. Hitler has lit the fire. Now, the world will see who survives the smoke. December 20th, 1944. The snow never ends. The wind cuts through the Ardennes like a blade. And in the center of that frozen wilderness lies a small Belgian town called Bastogne, 7 roads crossing in the middle of nowhere. Whoever holds Bastogne controls the heart of the Ardennes. When the German spearheads break through the front, the town becomes surrounded. Inside are 12,000 men of the U.S. 101st Airborne Division and fragments of armored units, completely cut off. The fog is thick, the cold unbearable, and the supplies nearly gone. No reinforcements, no escape. They are alone. Yet they stay, because if Bastogne falls, the whole Allied front collapses. General Anthony McAuliffe commands the defense. Calm, stubborn, unshakable. When German officers arrive under a white flag with an ultimatum, surrender or face total destruction, McAuliffe looks up from the paper, shrugs, and says one word, nuts. That single word travels through the town like fire in the snow. Every soldier smiles. Every man digs deeper. They will not surrender. Not here, not ever. The Germans answer with fury. Artillery pounds the town. Tanks advance through smoke, and the ground shakes for days. The paratroopers fight from ruined houses, from church basements, from behind shattered walls. Snow mixes with blood, and the silence of winter turns into a storm of steel. Medics run out of morphine. Rations freeze solid. Men sleep standing, rifles clutched in frozen hands. But they hold. Bastogne does not fall. Far to the south, General George S. Patton moves like lightning. His Third Army turns north through snow and ice, 100,000 men and 400 tanks racing against time. No one believes it's possible. Patton simply says, "We'll be there for Christmas." The roads are jammed, bridges collapsed, but he doesn't slow down. "Keep moving," he growls, and they do. Inside Bastogne, Christmas comes with explosions. In a shattered chapel, a priest prays over the wounded as shells tear the sky. Outside, soldiers hum Silent Night in whispers. Their breath turns to frost, their hearts to fire. On December 23rd, the miracle happens. The sky clears. Sunlight pierces the clouds, and the roar of engines fills the air. Hundreds of American planes appear, dropping food, ammo, and hope. Then come the fighters, Thunderbolts and Mustangs, diving through the smoke, destroying German columns trapped in the snow. The defenders cheer, some weep. For the first time in a week, they know they might live. 3 days later, the horizon trembles. Patton's lead tanks break through the German lines and roll into Bastogne. The siege is over. The men who survived look around at what remains, a town in ruins, comrades frozen in place, and a victory bought with blood. But Bastogne stands. Against all logic, against all odds, it stands. For the Allies, it is more than a victory. It is proof that Hitler's last gamble is doomed. His mighty offensive, once unstoppable, is running out of time, fuel, and faith. The snow of the Ardennes has swallowed his dream whole. December 23rd, 1944, after a week of fog, the heavens finally break open. For the soldiers in Bastogne, it feels like the first sunrise in eternity. The gray sky turns pale blue, and the sound that follows is not thunder, it's salvation. The deep, rhythmic hum of engines. Hundreds of American C-47 transport planes appear above the clouds, gliding like angels of war. Parachutes blossom in the sky, white against white, drifting down with crates of food, medicine, and ammunition. Men shout, cry, laugh, waving their helmets toward the sky. For days they've lived on crumbs and courage. Now, hope falls from above. But this miracle in the air is more than just supplies. It's the turning of the tide. The fog that once shielded the German advance now betrays them. The Allied Air Force, grounded for a week, finally returns with vengeance. Thunderbolts, Mustangs, and Typhoons sweep across the Ardennes, hunting convoys, tanks, and fuel trucks stranded on icy roads. Columns that once rolled west now burn in black plumes, visible for miles. The Luftwaffe tries to rise, but the skies belong to the Allies again. In a single day, Hitler's element of surprise is gone, replaced by terror raining from above. Below, the German offensive begins to suffocate. Their tanks, starved of fuel, stall in frozen valleys. Crews abandon them, retreating on foot through the snow. Commanders scream for gasoline, but none comes. Allied bombers have turned every road into a graveyard of twisted steel. Hitler's plan, built on speed and deception, is now trapped in the slow death of winter. Inside the forests, the soldiers feel the shift. The hunters have become the hunted. American artillery, now resupplied, begins to roar again, pounding enemy lines day and night. The same snow that once hid the Germans now exposes them, footprints glowing in the moonlight. The air smells of cordite and smoke, but also of something else, victory, faint and fragile, carried by the wind. Patton's columns continue north, breaking through resistance like an unstoppable tide. Every village they retake is a ruin, every road a frozen scar. The men are exhausted, frostbitten, hollow-eyed, yet they keep advancing. Somewhere ahead lies Bastogne, and beyond it, the enemy that almost turned the war upside down. Patton drives them forward with his usual mix of fury and faith. No bastard ever won a war by dying for his country, he once said. He won it by making the other poor bastard die for his. The men repeat his words like a mantra, half in anger, half in awe. In Hitler's headquarters, the news is grim. Reports arrive of fuel shortages, stalled armor, collapsing morale. The Führer rants about traitors and cowards, but deep inside, even he begins to feel the walls closing in. His last gamble, the Ardennes offensive, is crumbling beneath the very snow he thought would hide his army. The sky he prayed would stay cloudy has turned bright, and with that brightness, the illusion of victory melts away. By Christmas Eve, the German advance has slowed to a crawl. The once terrifying bulge on the Allied front is no longer expanding. It's collapsing. Villages once marked in red on Allied maps are now being reclaimed, one by one. And over Bastogne, the planes keep coming. Supply after supply, drop after drop, each parachute a promise that they will not be abandoned again. On Christmas morning, as church bells ring faintly through the smoke, soldiers share the last of their rations, lighting cigarettes with trembling hands. The war is far from over, but for the first time since the attack began, the Allies feel the warmth of momentum. The fog is gone, the sky is open, the tide has turned. And far above the battlefield, in that clear winter light, you can almost see it, the beginning of the end. The last week of December 1944, the storm Hitler unleashed has begun to consume itself. His armies, once rolling like a steel tide through the Ardennes, are now trapped in a web of ice, fire, and exhaustion. The momentum that once terrified the Allies has frozen in place. Everywhere, the same story unfolds. Tanks without fuel, men without food, orders without meaning. What was supposed to be a lightning strike toward Antwerp has turned into a desperate fight for survival. The trap is closing. In the forests outside Bastogne, German columns struggle to move. Panthers and tigers lie dead in ditches, their tracks frozen solid, their crews huddled beside them, praying for warmth. American artillery hammers the roads, cutting supply lines, shattering convoys. The sky, once Hitler's ally of fog and secrecy, now belongs entirely to the Allies. Bombers roar overhead day and night, turning crossroads and bridges into smoking craters. Each explosion marks another artery of the offensive severed. General Patton's Third Army pushes from the south with relentless force. His tanks grind forward through snowdrifts taller than men, engines howling in the cold. In the north, British and American forces under Montgomery tighten their hold, pressing down from every side. What was once a bulge on the map is being squeezed flat. The Germans call for reinforcements, but there are none. Hitler has gambled everything, and he has nothing left to give. On the ground, the horror is unending. The forests are filled with bodies, half buried in snow, their rifles still frozen in their hands. Villages are nothing but ashes. The civilians who remain hide in cellars, whispering prayers under candlelight as the walls tremble from distant thunder. The roads are choked with the wreckage of retreat, trucks overturned, tanks abandoned, soldiers stumbling west in silence. The mighty offensive that once promised to divide the Allies now lies broken, bleeding into the white earth of Belgium. In Berlin, Hitler refuses to believe it. He rages at his generals, demanding attacks that no longer exist, reinforcements that will never come. His eyes burn with delusion. He still sees victory in the smoke of defeat. But outside his bunker, the truth is written across the continent. The last reserves of the Reich are dying in the Ardennes. At the front, the Allies sense it too. The fear that once gripped them is gone, replaced by grim determination. Every shot fired, every yard regained, feels like revenge for Pearl Harbor, for Dunkirk, for every night the world spent under the shadow of swastikas. Patton drives his men harder. Eisenhower sees the end taking shape. The soldiers, though exhausted, fight on with one goal: finish what they started. By the turn of the year, the German lines begin to collapse. The pincer from north and south closes around the remnants of the offensive. Thousands of German troops are surrounded, their commanders captured, their tanks destroyed where they stand. The battle that began with thunder and surprise ends with silence and surrender. When the last shots fade across the snow, the scale of it becomes clear. Nearly 200,000 German casualties, entire divisions wiped out, the best of Hitler's remaining armor shattered beyond repair. For the Allies, it is a victory drenched in sacrifice. Over 80,000 dead, wounded, or missing. But they have endured. The Bulge is gone. In the quiet that follows, the forests seem haunted. The snow covers everything: the tracks, the trenches, the dead. The wind carries no more gunfire, only the faint echo of what once was. The Battle of the Bulge is over, but its shadow stretches far. It marks the end of German hope, the breaking of Hitler's last dream. And as the Allies march east, toward the Rhine and beyond, the soldiers know what lies ahead. The road to Berlin has opened. The end of the war and the fall of the Reich has begun. January 1945. The Ardennes are silent again, but it's not peace, it's exhaustion. The once mighty German army that roared into Belgium a month ago is now crawling back toward its own border, bleeding and broken. The roads that carry tanks and triumph are littered with wreckage, bodies, and the ruins of a dream. Soldiers who once shouted victory now whisper prayers against the cold. Their boots stick in the frozen mud, their uniforms torn, their faces hollow with hunger. The great offensive that was meant to change the war has ended in retreat. For Hitler, it is unthinkable. He refuses to call it defeat. From his bunker in Berlin, he orders new attacks, fresh divisions that no longer exist. He blames the weather, his generals, even the will of his own people. But deep inside, the truth begins to settle like the falling snow. The Third Reich is dying, and he cannot stop it. The Ardennes were his last hope, his final illusion of control. Now, all that remains is the retreat of despair. Along the retreating columns, chaos reigns. Trucks run out of fuel and are pushed into ditches. Horses pull artillery through ice-coated roads as men collapse beside them. The wounded are left behind, wrapped in blankets that freeze solid within hours. Entire villages, once symbols of conquest, are abandoned in flames. The soldiers move like ghosts through the forest, hunted by Allied planes that swooped down with roaring engines, turning retreat into massacre. The sky that once saved them now condemns them. For the Americans and British pushing forward, the scenes are haunting. Burned tanks, shattered helmets, letters frozen in the hands of the dead. The smell of diesel and death clings to everything. Some soldiers walk silently through the carnage. Others laugh nervously to keep from breaking. They know the price of victory is measured in blood, theirs and the enemy's. And still, they march on. At Bastogne, the defenders finally emerge from their holes. The town is little more than rubble now, but it stands a monument of defiance. The paratroopers look around at the frozen fields and whisper, "We made it." They don't cheer. They don't smile. They just breathe. For them, survival is victory enough. Patton's men push east, their engines coughing in the cold. The Allied counteroffensive becomes unstoppable. The once terrifying Bulge in the front line is gone, flattened by relentless firepower. Every mile gained brings them closer to the Rhine, closer to Germany itself. For the first time, the enemy is running, and no one doubts the direction of history anymore. The war has entered its final act. Behind the front, civilians crawl out of cellars to find their homes gone. Children stare at the horizon, where fire once glowed, now only smoke. Some wave to the passing American tanks. Others just watch in silence, their faces too numb for joy. The Ardennes have paid the price of war in full. In Berlin, reports arrive like hammer blows. The Wehrmacht has lost its last reserve of armor, its last chance to change the outcome. The generals speak of strategic withdrawal, but the truth is clear. It's a collapse. Hitler's dream of a 1,000-year Reich is ending after 12, and the man who once conquered half of Europe is now trapped inside a bunker, screaming at maps that no longer matter. By mid-January, the battle is officially over. What remains of the German army retreats beyond the Rhine, pursued by the Allies who no longer believe in rest. Snow continues to fall, covering everything: the dead, the broken machines, the lies. The Ardennes return to silence, but it's a silence heavy with ghosts. For the soldiers who survived, the memory will never fade. The frozen nights, the fear, the courage. They will call it the Battle of the Bulge, but those who were there will always remember it differently. Not as a line on a map, but as a place where hope and madness met in the snow. The retreat is over, but the war is not. Ahead lies the heart of Germany. Ahead lies Berlin. And every man who marches east knows one truth: the hardest part is still to come. January 1945. The guns have quieted, but the Ardennes are not at peace. Beneath the snow lie thousands of men who never went home. American, British, German, their stories frozen where they fell. The forests that once shook with artillery now breathe only wind and memory. The Battle of the Bulge has ended, leaving behind more than 80,000 Allied casualties and nearly 200,000 German losses, an entire generation buried under frost. The villages are wrecks of stone and smoke. Civilians stumble through ruins, searching for faces they will never find. Allied convoys crawl past them, engines rumbling softly, soldiers staring out of half-shattered trucks at the cost of what they have won. No one cheers. They are too tired for triumph. The victory feels heavy, built on exhaustion and ghosts. In Berlin, Hitler refuses to face the truth. His armies are retreating on every front. The Soviets closing from the east, the Western Allies pressing from the west. Yet he still dreams aloud of miracle weapons and final victories. But the world no longer listens. The Ardennes have proven what the Reich has become: a dying machine, fueled by fear and delusion. Across Europe, the winter drags on. The soldiers who survive try to make sense of what they've seen. Some write letters they will never send. Others simply stare into the snow. The smell of smoke still clings to their clothes. The echo of shells still rings in their ears. For them, there is no clean line between victory and loss, only survival. The Battle of the Bulge was Hitler's last gamble, his final attempt to change the inevitable. Instead, it hastened his end. In the months that followed, the Allies crossed the Rhine, liberated the camps, and marched into Berlin itself. The Reich fell not with glory, but with silence, the same silence that now covers the Ardennes. Today, the forests have grown back. moss hides the trenches, and children walk where tanks once burned. Yet, if you stand there in winter, when the air is still and the snow drifts deep, you can almost hear it, the distant rumble of engines, the muffled cries, the heartbeat of a world at war. And you remember that in these quiet woods, empires ended and courage endured, because the story of the Ardennes is not just about how wars are fought. It's about what remains when they are over, the silence, the sacrifice, and the fragile peace that men died to preserve.